What if I told you that one of the most powerful superfoods on the planet is probably growing in your backyard right now, and you have been taught to call it a weed? What if I told you this plant produces a grain with more calcium than a glass of milk, and leaves that are far more nutritious than kale? And what if I told you that this plant wasn't just forgotten, but was intentionally and brutally erased from our history, because it was a symbol of freedom that stood in the way of an empire? This is not a fantasy. This is the true story of a lost native grain, a plant so resilient it survived a 500-year-long campaign to wipe it from the face of the earth, a plant that holds the secret to incredible health and food independence. And today, we are going to uncover that secret. I've spent my life working with plants, and the thing that never ceases to amaze me is their memory. A plant remembers the sun, it remembers the soil, and it remembers its purpose, even when we humans forget. For years, I, like many farmers, battled a common weed in my fields. It was tough, persistent, and grew everywhere. We called it pigweed. We pulled it. We tilled it. We sprayed it. We saw it as an enemy, a nuisance that was stealing water and nutrients from our real crops. It wasn't until much later in my career, when I started digging into the history of our native food systems, that I had a moment that stopped me in my tracks. I was looking at an old botanical drawing of a sacred Aztec crop, a plant they called huautli, and I realized I was looking at a picture of pigweed. The weed I had been fighting for decades was not a weed at all. It was amaranth, and it was one of the most important foods in the history of the Americas. That discovery sent me down a rabbit hole that changed everything I thought I knew about our food. I learned that the story of amaranth is a story of incredible nutrition, of cultural survival, and of the deliberate suppression of knowledge. It is a story that every single person needs to hear. Let's start with the facts, because they are simply staggering. Our modern world tells us to drink milk for calcium to build strong bones. But 100 grams of amaranth grain contains about 159 milligrams of calcium. 100 milliliters of whole milk contains about 120 milligrams. That's right, this tiny ancient grain has more calcium than milk. But it doesn't stop there. It's also a complete protein, meaning it has all 9 essential amino acids, something incredibly rare in the plant world. It's packed with iron, magnesium, and phosphorus. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization has called its protein superior in content and quality to traditional cereals, like wheat and rice. And that's just the grain. The leaves of the amaranth plant are even more incredible. We are all told to eat kale, that it's the king of greens. Well, amaranth leaves make kale look weak. Let's compare them, side by side. For the same amount, amaranth leaves have 3 times more calcium than kale. They have more than 2.5 times the iron. They have 7 times more folate, a critical B vitamin. They are also higher in magnesium, potassium, and zinc. The only major nutrient where kale wins is vitamin A. In almost every other measure of mineral content, the humble amaranth leaf, the leaf of the pigweed, is far superior to the kale that is sold for a premium in every health food store. So, this brings us to the central burning question. If this plant is so powerful, so nutritious, so perfectly designed to feed people, why did it disappear? Why are we taught to despise it as a weed? The answer is not an accident of history. It is a story of conquest. For 8,000 years, amaranth was a cornerstone of civilization in the Americas. The Aztecs, the Maya, the Inca, they all cultivated it. It was a staple food, as important as corn and beans. They made a kind of flour from the grain for tortillas and tamales. They popped the seeds like tiny popcorn and mixed it with honey to make a sweet, nutritious candy called alegría, which means joy in Spanish. You can still find it in Mexico today, a sweet echo of a powerful past. But amaranth was more than just food. It was central to their spiritual life. During religious ceremonies, they would mix amaranth flower with honey or even blood and form it into figures of their gods. At the end of the ceremony, these figures would be broken and eaten by the community. It was a way of taking their gods into themselves, a deeply sacred act. And then, in the 16th century, the Spanish conquistadors arrived. They came for gold, but they also came to conquer souls. They saw the Aztec religion as idolatry, a devil worship that had to be stamped out. And they saw amaranth, this plant that was used to form the images of their gods, as a direct threat to the cross. To control the people, they had to control their food, and most importantly, their faith. So they banned it. This wasn't a gentle suggestion. The Spanish outlawed the cultivation of amaranth. Historical accounts tell us they threatened to cut off the hands of any indigenous farmer who was caught growing it. Think about the brutality of that. A plant that had fed people for millennia, a plant that was a gift from the earth, was declared illegal. Its fields were burned. Its sacred role was demonized. It was a deliberate act of cultural genocide, an attempt to erase a people by erasing their food. But you cannot erase a plant that wants to live. You cannot defeat a people who refuse to forget. While the Spanish forced the cultivation of wheat, a foreign grain that served their own culture and religion, the indigenous people of the Americas became guardians of a secret. In a radical act of courage that spanned generations, they kept amaranth alive. They grew it in hidden patches, in secret gardens, away from the watchful eyes of the colonists. Women, the traditional keepers of the seeds, would hide tiny handfuls of the precious grain in their homes. They poured them into clay jars and buried them under their floors. They passed them down from mother to daughter, a sacred trust, a promise to the future, whispering the stories and the knowledge that went with them. There are incredible stories from the more recent past, too. During the brutal civil war in Guatemala in the late 20th century, state forces were targeting indigenous Maya communities, burning their fields. Once again, amaranth faced extinction, and once again, the women saved it. One Maya Quiche woman named Magali Salazar hid a small glass jar of amaranth seeds behind a ceiling tile in her home. After the war, when it was safe, she brought out those seeds and began sharing them, helping to bring the sacred plant back to her community. This is why amaranth is so much more than just a health food. It is a symbol of survival. It is a testament to the resilience of indigenous people, who refuse to let their culture be extinguished. As one modern horticulturist said, the fact that amaranth still exists today is like a big middle finger to the conquistadors. Somebody was always hanging on to those seeds, making sure that one day we would have this again. And now we do. Since the 1970s, scientists and farmers have rediscovered amaranth. Research began in the United States, and by the end of that decade, thousands of acres were being cultivated. Today, it has become a billion-dollar food product. You can find it in health food stores, in protein bars, and in trendy restaurants. But for many indigenous communities, it was never lost. It was always there, waiting. Now, let's talk about what this plant can do for you. I want to get practical, because this is not just a history lesson. This is about your health and your freedom. First, let's talk about the grain. Amaranth grain is gluten-free. If you have celiac disease or a gluten intolerance, this is a powerful alternative to wheat. It is also incredibly versatile. You can cook it like rice or oatmeal. You can pop it like popcorn. You can grind it into flour for bread or pancakes. And because it is a complete protein, it is an excellent choice for vegetarians and vegans who are looking for plant-based sources of all the essential amino acids. The health benefits are backed by science. The high levels of iron make it valuable for people who struggle with anemia. The calcium is essential for bone health, especially as we age. The magnesium supports hundreds of different functions in your body, from muscle and nerve function to blood sugar control. And the antioxidants in amaranth may help reduce inflammation and improve brain function. This is not a fad. This is a food that has been tested by thousands of years of human history. Now, let's talk about the leaves. This is where things get really exciting for anyone who wants to grow their own food. Amaranth greens are one of the easiest, most productive crops you can grow. They grow fast. They grow almost anywhere, and they are incredibly forgiving. You can harvest the leaves continuously throughout the growing season, and the plant just keeps producing more. They have a mild, slightly sweet taste, similar to spinach, and can be used in exactly the same way. You can eat them raw in salads, sauté them with garlic, add them to soups and stews, or blend them into smoothies. And remember those numbers I gave you earlier. More calcium than kale, more iron than kale, 7 times the folate. You could be growing one of the most nutritious greens on the planet in a pot on your balcony or in a corner of your garden for almost no cost. And the irony is, if you live in North America, it is probably already trying to grow there on its own. The wild amaranth, the pigweed that farmers spend millions of dollars trying to kill, is the same plant. It is edible. It is nutritious. It is a survivor. Here's how to get started. You can buy amaranth seeds from many seed companies that specialize in heirloom and heritage varieties. Look for varieties like Red Garnet, Love Lies Bleeding, or Golden Giant, which are grown for both their grain and their leaves. Plant them after the last frost, in a sunny spot with well-drained soil. They are not fussy. They can handle poor soil and drought conditions that would kill other crops. This is a plant that evolved in the deserts and highlands of the Americas. It is tough. Once the plants are a few inches tall, you can start harvesting the young leaves. Just pinch off the outer leaves and let the plant keep growing. As the plant matures, it will produce those beautiful, dramatic flower plumes, which can be red, purple, orange, or gold. These are not just pretty. They are the seed heads. Let them dry on the plant, then cut them off and thresh them to release the tiny seeds. One plant can produce tens of thousands of seeds. You can save them for next year. Share them with your neighbors, or grind them into flour. This is what food independence looks like. But I want to go deeper than just the practical steps. I want to talk about what this plant represents. We live in a world where our food system is controlled by a handful of giant corporations. They tell us what to eat. They sell us seeds that cannot be saved and replanted. They sell us chemicals to kill the weeds that are often more nutritious than the crops we are trying to grow. They have disconnected us from the land and from the ancient knowledge of how to feed ourselves. Amaranth is a rebellion against that system. It is a plant that cannot be controlled. It grows wild. It spreads its seeds on the wind. It refuses to die. For 500 years, empires have tried to destroy it, and it has outlasted them all. When you plant amaranth, you are not just growing food. You are participating in an act of resistance that stretches back through generations. You are joining hands with the indigenous women who hid seeds under their floorboards. You are saying that you will not be dependent on a system that does not have your best interests at heart. Think about what we have lost. We have been taught that our food comes from a store, wrapped in plastic, shipped from thousands of miles away. We have forgotten that food can grow right outside our door. We have forgotten that the plants our ancestors relied on for millennia are still here, waiting for us to remember them. Amaranth is one of those plants. It is a key to a different way of living. I want to ask you a question. Look around your neighborhood, your backyard, the edges of your local park. Have you ever seen a tall, weedy plant with reddish stems and leaves that look a bit like spinach? Have you ever seen a plant with a dramatic, fuzzy, reddish flower spike? That might be amaranth. That might be a superfood hiding in plain sight. A a gift from the past that has been waiting for you to recognize it. Of course, I have to give you a word of caution. If you are going to forage for wild amaranth, make sure you know what you are looking for. Get a good field guide or learn from someone with experience. Make sure the plants have not been sprayed with herbicides or pesticides. And always start with a small amount to make sure you don't have any sensitivities. But once you are confident, you will have access to a free, abundant source of some of the most nutritious greens on the planet. There is something else I want you to understand about amaranth, something that goes beyond nutrition and history. This plant teaches us about the nature of resilience itself. Think about what it has endured. It was the sacred food of great civilizations. It was banned, burned, and nearly destroyed. It survived as a weed, growing in the margins, despised and ignored. And now it is being rediscovered as a superfood. That is not just a story about a plant. That is a story about how truth survives. It is a story about how the things that are truly valuable cannot be permanently erased, no matter how hard the powerful try. I think about the women who saved those seeds. They did not know if their children or grandchildren would ever be able to plant them freely. They did not know if the knowledge they were protecting would ever be valued again. But they saved them anyway. They had faith in the future. They believed that someday someone would remember. And they were right. We are that future. We are the ones who are remembering. This is why I believe that growing amaranth is more than just a gardening project. It is an act of connection. When you plant those seeds, you are connecting to a chain of human beings that stretches back 8,000 years. You are connecting to the Aztec farmers who cultivated it in the shadow of their pyramids. You are connecting to the indigenous women who hid it from the conquistadors. You are connecting to the Maya mothers who buried jars of seeds under their floors during a brutal war. You are becoming a link in that chain, carrying the knowledge forward for the next generation. The story of amaranth is a story of hope. It tells us that even when powerful forces try to erase something good, it can survive. It tells us that knowledge, passed down through generations, is stronger than any empire. It tells us that the solutions to our modern problems, our health crises, our food insecurity, our disconnection from the earth, are often not new inventions. They are ancient wisdom waiting to be rediscovered. I have spent my career studying plants, and I have come to believe that every plant has a story to tell. The story of amaranth is one of the most powerful I have ever encountered. It is a story of violence and survival, of suppression and resilience, of a tiny seed that carried the hopes of a people across centuries of darkness. Today, that seed is available to you. You can plant it. You can eat it. You can share it. You can become part of its story. And in doing so, you can take a small step toward reclaiming your own health and your own freedom. So, I want to leave you with a question. What is one plant, one piece of forgotten knowledge that you have rediscovered in your own life? What is something that was hidden from you, that you are now bringing back into the light? I would love to hear your stories. Share them in the comments below. Let's learn from each other. The knowledge is out there. It is in the old books, in the stories of our grandparents, in the wild plants that grow at the edges of our fields. We just need to have the eyes to see it, and the courage to embrace it. The lost native grain is not lost anymore. It is right here, and it is waiting for you. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you found this information valuable, if it opened your eyes to something new, I hope you will share it with someone who needs to hear it. There is so much more to uncover. So many more stories to tell. Until next time, keep looking, keep questioning, and keep growing.